The fluorescent lights of the emergency room buzzed overhead like angry hornets as I sat alone in the plastic chair, my hands still trembling from the ambulance ride. My phone screen glowed with the last message I'd sent my husband, Mark. I collapsed at work. They think it's my heart. Please come to St. Mary's ER. Delivered. Read at 6:42 p.m. No reply. It was New Year's Eve, and the hospital corridors echoed with distant laughter from the nurse's station. People counting down to midnight, while my world was unraveling. I'd been fine that morning, or so I thought. A little tired, maybe. The usual exhaustion from juggling a full-time job as a senior accountant, while keeping our home running smoothly. But during the afternoon meeting, the room had spun violently, my chest tightening like a vice. The next thing I remember is waking up on the floor with colleagues hovering over me, someone pressing an oxygen mask to my face. The doctor had just left after delivering the news. Acute pericarditis, likely triggered by a viral infection I'd been ignoring for weeks. Inflammation around the heart. Treatable but serious. I needed rest, medication, and most importantly, someone by my side. Mark should have been here hours ago. He was only 20 minutes away at home, getting ready for whatever plans he claimed to have. I scrolled to my phone again, hoping for a missed call, a text, anything. Instead, I found myself staring at a photo he'd posted on social media earlier that day. Him in a tailored suit, grinning next to her. Vanessa, the work colleague, who'd somehow become a fixture in our conversations over the past year. Late nights at the office. Weekend team building, trips. The perfume on his collar, that wasn't mine. My thumb hovered over the photo before I closed the app. Deep down, I'd known something was wrong for months. The distance, the arguments that ended with him storming out, the way he'd stopped looking at me like I was the woman he couldn't live without, the way he had when we met 10 years ago, fresh out of college, building dreams together. At 8:17 p.m., my phone finally vibrated. A text from Mark. Hey, sorry. Phone was on silent. How are you feeling? I stared at the words, my chest aching in a way that had nothing to do with the pericarditis. He knew. He'd read my message hours ago. I typed back, where are you? The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, still at the office party. Vanessa's hosting. It would have been rude to leave early. I'll swing by tomorrow morning. Okay? Get some rest. The office party. Vanessa's party. In her sleek downtown loft, no doubt filled with their young, ambitious colleagues. Champagne flowing, music pulsing. Everyone toasting to new beginnings while I lay hooked to monitors, alone. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The nurse came in to adjust my 4, her eyes kind but pitying when she saw my face. Family on the way, honey? I forced a smile. He's busy. She patted my hand and left me in the dim light, the heart monitor beeping steadily, like a metronome counting down to something inevitable. Midnight came and went. Fireworks exploded faintly outside the window, muffled by the glass. The new year arrived without fanfare in room 312. And that's when I made my decision. By morning, Mark finally showed up, disheveled, smelling faintly of expensive perfume and regret. He rushed to my bedside, taking my hand with practiced concern. Elena, baby, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize how serious it was. The party ran late, and... It's fine, I said quietly, pulling my hand away. My voice was calm, steady, the kind of calm that comes after a storm has already destroyed everything. He blinked, confused. You're not mad. Oh, I'm furious. I replied, meeting his eyes for the first time in months. Really meeting them, but not for the reason you think. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair. What do you mean? I mean, I said, reaching for the call button to summon the nurse, that while you were choosing Vanessa's party over your wife's health scare, I had a lot of time to think. About us. About the last 10 years. About how I've been carrying this marriage alone while you've been elsewhere. Elena, come on. It was just a party. Nothing happened. Save it. The nurse entered, and I turned to her with a genuine smile. Could you please ask security to escort this man out? He's not family. Mark's face drained of color. What? Elena? You can't be serious. I'm deadly serious. I looked back at him, feeling something cold and final settle in my chest. You made your choice last night, Mark. Now I'm making mine. He stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish, as security arrived moments later. The last image I had of him was his panicked expression as they led him away, protesting that this was a misunderstanding, that we could talk about it. But we were long past talking. The weeks that followed were a blur of recovery and revelation. With time on my hands and clarity in my heart, I hired a private investigator. What I uncovered wasn't just an affair, it was a double life. Joint accounts I'd never known about. Trips billed as business that matched perfectly with Vanessa's social media posts from tropical resorts. Gifts purchased on our credit card that ended up around her neck. When I confronted him with the evidence, served alongside divorce papers, he crumbled. The confident man who'd chosen a party over his collapsing wife begged on his knees for forgiveness, promising to end things with Vanessa to make it right. But some choices echo forever. Vanessa, it turned out, had no interest in a broke, divorced man with a reputation in tatters. Their epic love lasted exactly as long as his marriage benefits did. She moved on to someone higher up the corporate ladder within months. Mark lost everything. The house we built together, half his savings, his standing at work where whispers followed him like shadows. He tried calling, texting, showing up at my new apartment with flowers and apologies that grew more desperate with each rejection. One rainy afternoon, nearly a year after that fateful New Year's Eve, he cornered me outside my office. He looked older, worn. The spark that had once drawn me to him dimmed to nothing. "Elena," he said, voice breaking, "I regret it every single day. Choosing her party over you. It was the biggest mistake of my life. Please, just give me a chance to..." I stopped and looked at him, really looked for the last time. "You didn't just choose a party, Mark. You chose to show me exactly who you are when it matters most. And now you get to live with that truth. Forever." I walked away without looking back, the rain washing over me like a baptism into life I was finally building for myself. And somewhere in the distance, I could almost hear the fireworks of a new beginning. Mine. 2 years slipped by in a rhythm I hadn't known I was capable of finding. The apartment I rented in the city's arts district became a sanctuary. High ceilings, exposed brick, windows that caught the morning light and spilled it across hardwood floors. I painted the walls a soft sage, hung shelves filled with books I actually had time to read, and adopted a rescue cat named Luna, who curled against my ankle every evening as I cooked dinner for one. For the first time in a decade, my life felt like it belonged entirely to me. Work flourished in ways I never expected. After the divorce, I'd taken a calculated risk and applied for the director of finance position that opened at a rival firm. The interview panel included a woman who'd once been my mentor years earlier. She remembered the sharp, ambitious girl I'd been before marriage softened my edges. They offered me the job on the spot, with a salary that made Mark's alimony payments feel almost symbolic. I accepted without hesitation. Success has a way of sharpening focus. Late nights at the office no longer felt like sacrifice. They felt like investment. I traveled to conferences in London and Singapore, networked with people who spoke my language of spreadsheets and strategy, and discovered that being unattached in my mid-30s carried a kind of effortless power. Men noticed. Women, too. Invitations arrived, dinner, drinks, weekend getaways. But I declined most. I wasn't ready. Or perhaps I was simply enjoying the quiet thrill of choosing myself first. Mark, meanwhile, spiraled in slow motion. Mutual friends, those few who still spoke to both of us, passed along fragments of his life like cautionary tales. He'd been demoted after the affair became office gossip. Vanessa had made sure everyone knew he was a married one who pursued her. He moved into a cramped studio across town, sold the luxury watch I'd gifted him for our 5th anniversary, and started drinking more than he should on weekends. Every so often, a text would arrive from an unknown number. "I miss you. I dream about you. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm trying to become someone better." I never replied, but I didn't block the numbers either. Some small, uncharitable part of me wanted him to know I saw them, and still chose silence. Then, on a crisp October morning in 2024, everything tilted again. I was in the middle of a board presentation when my assistant slipped into the conference room and placed a note in front of me. "Your ex-husband is in the lobby. He says it's an emergency." The room was silent. 12 executives waiting for my next slide on projected Q4 earnings. I excused myself with the calm I perfected over years of crisis management and took the elevator down. Mark stood near the security desk, thinner than I remembered, wearing a coat that had seen better days. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands trembling slightly as he clutched a manila envelope. When he saw me, he straightened like a man bracing for impact. "Elena," he said, voice rough, "thank you for coming down." "What's the emergency, Mark?" I kept my tone professional, the way I spoke to vendors who'd missed deadlines. He held out the envelope. "It's not about me. It's about us, or what's left of us." His fingers shook harder as I took it. Inside was a stack of medical records, lab results, and a letter from a genetic counselor addressed to both our names. My stomach dropped. During our marriage, we'd tried for years to have children. Tests, treatments, heartbreak month after month. Eventually we'd stopped. The grief too heavy between us. I'd assumed the issue was mine. Endometriosis, irregular cycles, the usual suspects. But the documents in my hand told a different story. Male factor infertility. Severe. A genetic mutation that made natural conception nearly impossible. Without intervention, we'd never pursued. The dates on the reports went back 8 years. Tests Mark had apparently taken in secret, then hidden. "You knew," I whispered, the words barely audible over the lobby's distant hum. "All those years I blamed myself, cried in bathrooms at baby showers. Felt like I was failing you. You knew it was you." He wouldn't meet my eyes. I couldn't face it. My father always talked about carrying on the family name, about strength and legacy. I thought if I admitted it, you'd leave, or worse, stay out of pity. So you let me carry the guilt alone. My voice rose enough that security glanced over. I lowered it again. "And then you cheated anyway." Tears tracked down his cheeks. "I was a coward. I've spent every day since you left trying to make sense of how I became this person. Therapy, meetings, whatever it takes. But when the counselor contacted me last month, some new study needed participants with this exact mutation. I realized you deserve to know the truth, in case it matters for your health, or future choices." I stared at the papers until the words blurred. All those years of longing, of charting temperatures and injections and negative tests, and he'd known. The betrayal felt fresh, sharper than the night he'd chosen Vanessa's party. "I'm sorry," he said again, the phrase worn thin from overuse. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just couldn't keep carrying this secret while you rebuilt your life, thinking you were the broken one." For a long moment, I said nothing. Then I folded the envelope and tucked it into my purse. "Thank you for telling me," I said finally. "Now go." He hesitated, searching my face for something. Anger, tears, anything familiar. But I gave him nothing. He nodded once and walked out into the autumn sunlight, shoulders hunched against a wind that wasn't there. Back in my office, I locked the door, sat at my desk, and let myself cry for the first time in years. Not for Mark, not even for the marriage, for the children who would never exist, for the version of myself who believed love meant absorbing someone else's shame to protect their ego. When the tears dried, I opened my laptop and emailed my therapist to schedule an appointment. Some wounds reopened just so they can finally heal clean. Life resumed its forward motion, but something had shifted. Knowing the truth released a weight I hadn't realized I still carried. I started saying yes to those invitations I'd been declining. Dinner with Julian, the charming venture capitalist I'd met at a gala. Weekend hiking with Sarah and her wife, who become my closest friends. A spontaneous trip to Tuscany with 3 women from work, where we drank too much Chianti and laughed until our sides ached. And then on December 30th, 2025, the day before the 5-year anniversary of that fateful New Year's Eve, my phone lit up a number I hadn't saved but instantly recognized. Mark's voice was different when I answered. Calmer, steady. "Elena, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I'm calling to say something I should have said a long time ago without expecting anything back." He paused. I'm proud of you. The woman you become, the life you've built. It's extraordinary. I destroyed what we had, but watching you rise from it, it's the only thing that makes me believe people can change. I'm selling the last of my old things tomorrow and moving to Colorado. New start, far away. I won't contact you again after this. I sat on my balcony, Luna purring in my lap. City lights twinkling below as snow began to fall in fat, silent flakes. I'm glad you're finding peace, Mark. I said honestly. I've found mine. We spoke for nearly an hour, careful, respectful, like two strangers who once shared a life. He told me about the job he'd taken teaching financial literacy to at-risk youth, about the sober living house where he'd lived for 18 months. I told him about Tuscany, about the promotion I'd accepted to CFO, about how Luna had destroyed 3 sets of curtains, but I loved her anyway. When we hung up, the snow was sticking to the railing, transforming the city into something soft and quiet. I poured myself a glass of wine and stood watching the flakes drift down, thinking about the woman who'd lain in that hospital bed 5 years earlier, terrified and alone. Tomorrow would be New Year's Eve again. I had plans, dinner with friends, then a rooftop party overlooking the river where fireworks would bloom over the water at midnight. No one would be checking their phone for a late arrival. No one would choose someone else over me, because the only person whose choice mattered now was mine. As the clock ticked closer tomorrow, I raised my glass to the falling snow and the woman I'd become. The story wasn't over. It was simply no longer his to write. The doorbell rang unexpectedly, pulling me from my thoughts. Through the peephole, I saw a delivery person holding an enormous arrangement of white roses and evergreen boughs, winter flowers, elegant and fragrant. The card was handwritten in unfamiliar script. To new beginnings that arrive exactly when they're meant to. J. Julian, the venture capitalist who'd spent the last 3 months patiently charming his way past every wall I'd built. He'd mentioned wanting to see me tomorrow night, but I hadn't committed. This was his gentle, persistent way of asking again. I brought the flowers inside, their scent filling the apartment, and set them on the kitchen island where Luna immediately began investigating. My phone buzzed, a text from Julian. No pressure, but I'd love to watch the fireworks with you tomorrow. Either way, happy almost New Year, Elena. I smiled, fingers hovering over the keyboard. For the first time in years, the future felt wide open, full of possibilities I hadn't dared imagine back when I thought love required diminishing myself to fit someone else's fragility. I typed back, I like that very much. Pick me up at 8? His reply came instantly. Can't wait. As I arranged the roses in a vase, snow continuing to blanket the world outside, I realized something profound. The greatest revenge wasn't Mark's regret, or Vanessa's fleeting interest, or even the success I'd built from ashes. The greatest revenge was this: a life so rich, so wholly mine, that the past no longer cast a shadow. Tomorrow night, I'd step into 2026 wearing something red and fearless, Julian's hand in mine, ready for whatever came next. And if Mark, hundreds of miles away in Colorado, happened to look up at the same moon and feel a pang of what he'd lost, well, that was simply the echo of a choice he'd made long ago, fading quieter with every new beginning I claimed. The fireworks were waiting. So was everything else. Julian arrived precisely at 8, stepping out of the elevator in a charcoal overcoat dusted with snow, holding a single red camellia he'd protected from the cold. His smile was warm, unhurried, the kind that didn't demand anything but offered everything. We rode down together in comfortable silence, his hand brushing mine as he helped me into the waiting car. The city glittered under a fresh blanket of white. Streets hushed as if holding their breath for midnight. Dinner was at a rooftop restaurant I'd never tried before, all glass walls and candlelight, the river winding black and silver below us. Our table overlooked the bridge where the fireworks would soon erupt. Julian listened more than he spoke, drawing out stories I'd forgotten I had. About the first apartment Mark and I rented with its leaking ceiling, about the stray dog I'd nursed back to health in college, about the way numbers had always felt like music to me. When I told him about the hospital night 5 years ago, I expected pity. Instead, he reached across the table and traced the inside of my wrist with his thumb. You turned pain into power, he said simply. That's rare and beautiful. Dessert arrived untouched as the countdown began. The restaurant dimmed its lights, guests migrating toward the heated terrace. Julian slipped my coat over my shoulders and led me outside where the air was sharp and clean, snowflakes melting on our lashes. At 11:58, he pulled me close, his breath warm against my ear. Whatever this year brings, he murmured, I'm grateful it starts with you. The first firework exploded, a golden chrysanthemum blooming across the sky, followed by a cascade of emerald and sapphire, crimson and violet. Each burst reflected in the river below, doubling the spectacle until the world seemed made entirely of light and color. Cheers rose from the streets far beneath us, strangers embracing in the glow. I felt Julian's arms tighten around my waist, steady and certain, and in that moment, something inside me fully released. I saw it all at once. The terrified woman in the hospital bed, convinced she wasn't enough. The furious wife serving divorce papers with shaking hands. The cautious survivor rebuilding brick by brick. And now this version of Elena, standing in the first minutes of 2026, wrapped in the arms of a man who saw her clearly and chose her anyway. Another rocket screamed upward, shattering into 1,000 silver stars that rained down like blessings. I tilted my face to the sky, letting the cold kiss my skin, and laughed, really laughed, for the sheer joy of being alive here now. Julian turned me to face him, snow catching in his dark hair. Happy New Year, Elena. Happy New Year, I whispered back, and then his lips were on mine, soft at first, then deeper, tasting of champagne and possibility. The kiss lasted through 3 more explosions, each one echoing in my chest like a heartbeat finally free of old scars. When we pulled apart, foreheads resting together, he smiled against my mouth. I have a confession. Oh! I raised an eyebrow, still breathless. I've been hoping for this moment since the night we met at the gala, but I knew you needed time to choose yourself first. My heart expanded, warm despite the winter air. And now, he said, eyes shining brighter than the fireworks, I'd like to choose you every day, if you'll let me. The final crescendo began, a thunderous barrage of light and sound that painted the entire horizon in gold. I looked at Julian, at the future stretching out like the river below, unknown, sparkling, mine to navigate. Yes, I said, the word carrying over the roar of celebration. Every day. We kissed again as the display reached its magnificent peak, colors I'd never seen before swirling together in impossible patterns. And in that perfect chaos of light, I understood the true ending of my story wasn't Mark's regret or Vanessa's abandonment or even the empire I'd built from ashes. The true ending was this. A woman who had once been left alone in a hospital bed on New Year's Eve now standing in the arms of love that arrived only after she learned to never abandon herself again. As the last sparks faded into smoke and the crowd erupted in applause, Julian took my hand. We stayed on the terrace long after others drifted inside. Watching snow continue to fall gently over the city we both claimed as home. Somewhere far away, Mark might be looking at a different sky, carrying the weight of choices that could never be undone. But here, in this moment, his shadow had no place. The past had served its purpose. It had forged me, tested me, and ultimately set me free. I squeezed Julian's fingers, feeling the promise in them. The year ahead would bring challenges, of course. Life always does. But it would also bring mornings filled with coffee and shared newspapers, travels to places we'd pin on a map together, quiet evenings with Luna purring between us, and the slow, delicious discovery of building something real. More than that, it would bring the continued adventure of choosing myself every single day, while opening my heart to someone who understood that was the greatest gift I could offer. We finally stepped back inside as the restaurant began to empty, my red dress catching the candlelight one last time. Julian helped me with my coat, his hand lingering at the small of my back. "Ready to go home?" he asked softly. Home. The word felt brand new. More than ready, I answered. As we rode the elevator down to the snow-quiet streets, I caught our reflection in the mirrored walls. Two people glowed with the kind of hope that only comes after surviving the worst and discovering you're stronger than you ever knew. Outside, the city was transformed. Every surface softened by white, Every light diffused into halos. We walked slowly, no rush to be anywhere but exactly where we were. Snow crunched under our boots, our breath mingling in the air like secrets shared. Halfway across the bridge, I stopped and looked back at the skyline we'd just left behind. 5 years ago, I'd watched fireworks alone through a hospital window, wondering if I'd ever feel whole again. Tonight, I watched them with a man who saw all of me, the scars, the strength, the joy, and loved every part. Julian stood behind me, arms circled around my waist, chin resting on my shoulder. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That sometimes," I said, voice steady and sure, "the most beautiful stories aren't the ones where everything goes perfectly from the beginning. They're the ones where someone falls apart completely and then chooses, piece by piece, to become something even more magnificent." He pressed a kiss to my temple. "And you, Elena, are magnificent." I turned in his arms, snow falling around us like confetti from the universe itself. "So are we," I whispered. "This, us, the life we're about to build." Then I kissed him again, right there in the middle of the bridge, as the city slept under its winter blanket and 2026 stretched out before us. Vast, unknown, and utterly ours. The woman who had once been abandoned on New Year's Eve had not just survived. She had become the firework. Bright, unapologetic, impossible to look away from, and soaring higher than anyone who'd ever tried to dim her light could ever imagine.